All right, Chapter 3. The Reef Sends a Warning. At the bottom of the volcano, Tomas walked across the sunny plateau where Ramon and Miguel had spread out the salted fish to dry and ran down the dike to the beach. Disillusioned and saddened by his discovery, he sat down in his father's chair, wondering how he would tell Miguel there was no ship. After thinking about it for a time, he decided he would not. The island had been so much more beautiful when the ship had been there. It had glowed with gold lights and had boomed with the sounds of wind filling sails and rattling ancient riggings. He would not spoil that for Miguel. The matter settled, he ambled out onto the rock reef, which was now above water. The tide was almost all the way out, exposing the rocks like the spine of a lizard. They were uncovered at about the same hour each day, for the Sea of Cortez had a 12-hour tide, not the twice-a-day ebb and flood that exists along most of the U.S. coasts. This is due to the movement of the water as it rocks in the Sea of Cortez, and the way the Gulf lies in relation to the Earth's axis and the moon. On the last stone of the reef, Tomas sat himself down in a busy world. Waves of little hermit crabs that had been left high and dry by the tide scurried on their pointed toes. Carrying the heavy shells in which they lived, they ran toward the scent of water. In the tidal pool at his feet, the increasing light told the sea anemones the tide was almost out. They began closing their flower-like tendrils to survive the long hours in stale water. The hachas, little oysters, were already closed for the duration, while over the top of the brown seaweed danced a lively ballet troupe of Sally light foot crabs. In their brilliant red armor, they all skittered backward simultaneously when Tomas lifted his head. They swept forward like a chorus line when he sat still. Tomas took off his clothes and, picking up a heavy rock, jumped into the water. He was quickly plunged 12 feet down to the white coral sand at the bottom of the reef. Why there was white coral sand on a red and black volcanic island was a mystery that Tomas wondered about. He looked around for an answer each time he dived. Perhaps he would find an ancient white coral reef under the sea on one of his trips. Tomas grinned as he beheld a world more fantastic than anything he could conjure up in his imagination. Blue, green, yellow, black, orange, and purple fish floated dreamlike from the top of the reef to the bottom. On the rocks clung animals that looked like flowers, fans, strings, rubber tires, spaceships, and Aztec gods, and they were all real. Tomas frightened a pretty 4-inch damselfish. It swam away, gathered courage, and returned to Tomas's face. Lifting its lace-like fins, it opened its mouth and challenged him to battle. Tomas was on its property, 5 square feet of algae-covered reef, and the water several feet in front of it. The green-gray fish was a farmer. It grew and weeded an algae crop upon which it fed. Tomas knew this fish well. He plucked a piece of algae to say he had accepted the damselfish's challenge to fight. He had often seen rival damselfish do this and stir up a battle. It worked for Tomas too. Instantly the little fish attacked, striking and biting him with its mouth. Tomas grinned mischievously and stopped teasing his courageous little friend. An iridescent green-blue parrotfish came out of a cave and inspected Tomas. They also knew each other. Every time Tomas dived here, this very same bump-head parrotfish greeted him by tipping on his side and contemplating him out of an eye encircled with long, lash-like streaks. Tomas blew a bubble, and the handsome fish snapped his bright blue beak. It was composed of heavy tooth plates that audibly scraped algae from the rocks. Tomas would have followed the parrotfish to his cave had he not been running out of breath. Remembering the grebe, he decided to stay down longer, even though his lungs hurt. He began counting. At 7, he dropped the rock and shot to the surface. After taking many deep breaths, he picked up another rock and went down again. The sunlight bounced off the white seafloor and illuminated a garden of purple sea fans that stood among rippling ribbons of copper-colored seaweed. A school of 3-banded butterfly fish swam overhead, circling like a wheel. Tomas looked up, through and around them, into a kaleidoscope of light and color. Suspended in this beautiful water space, watching the fantastic in a world of fantastics, Tomas no longer cared that there was no ship. Once more his lungs hurt. Determined to increase their capacity, he held onto the rack and sat resolutely on the bottom. Just in front of him lay an overhang. The sea currents that rushed along the reef here had eroded it, leaving the deep, dark overhang. Tomas swam a short distance under it, looking for his friend the Jewfish, which lived in the cave at the bottom of the sea. The fish had large black eyes that had evolved for night hunting, the time when the Jewfish fed. When it did not appear, Tomas forced himself to hold his breath yet longer and swam farther under the overhang, and then he saw something else. Far to his right loomed the tail of a huge shark. He could not see the head, for the beast was moving in and out of focus in the darkness of the cavern, but what he saw was big. It must be the whale shark that Miguel had seen swimming up from the deep water, ripping nets as it came. Tomas still held his breath, determined to get a better look at his shark. The sea water was burning his eyes now, and all he could see was a tail vanishing into watery gloom. He dropped the rock and kicked up toward air. As he rose, he looked down. The shark cast a shadow as it moved along the whole course of the overhang, some 100 feet. Tomas could not see the head or the yellow spots on the body that would tell him it was a whale shark, but he knew it was a shark. It was constantly moving. Sharks must keep swimming to stay alive. These fish, whose ancestors appeared in the seas 150 million years ago, cannot get oxygen unless they are streaming ahead. They have no air bladders and no gill covers to pump the aerated water over their gills. The shark is doomed to eternally swim forward to force water through its gill clefts. Because sharks must move, shark fishermen do not have to fight the dangerous fish. Their nets hold them still, and the sharks drown. They cannot swim backward. Tomas surfaced, gasped air, and grabbed another rock. He wanted to see the whole body of his whale shark. He plunged to the bottom again and peered under the overhang. The shark had gone, swimming slowly but constantly forward. Dropping his rock, Tomas made a more leisurely ascent this trip and noticed that there was not one fish on the reef now. Their absence should have been a warning. Fish flee when killer sharks are around, but he would not let the warning in. There was not a ship, but there was a whale shark. Just before he surfaced, he saw a blurry body serpentine into the distance and disappear. "It's him!" Tomas spluttered into the sunlight. "It's him!" Clambering up onto the reef, he grabbed his clothes and was dressing when the Evinrude 55 sounded beyond the tip of the cove, and the Torres' boat came into view. "Miguel! Grandpapa!" he called, bouncing goat-like over the rocks. He headed for the beach to greet them. Miguel drove the boat up onto the sand as far as it would go and jumped out. "Any luck?" Tomas asked. "One small hammerhead," Miguel answered, lifting a 3-foot-long torpedo of silvery gray flesh and cartilage from the boat. "It's a great hammerhead," said Ramon. "A baby, but it will bring us a few extra pesos for Christmas." Tomas carried the fish to the cleaning table, surprised that so small a shark could be so heavy. What would his huge whale shark weigh? He would, indeed, need Quetzalcoatl to help him lift it. The great hammerhead Ramon and Miguel had caught was a youngster of the largest species of the hammerhead shark family, a family that consists of the hammerhead and the shovelhead sharks. They are man-eaters. On occasion, human remains have been found in the stomachs of all species. Their weirdly designed heads have earned them their names, shaped as they are like hammerheads and shovels. No one knows why they are shaped this way. One guess is that the strange heads balance them in the water, like the fins on an airplane's tail. Another is that the widely separated eyes give the fish binocular vision, the better to catch their prey. Their mouths are slung far under their heads, and because, like those of all sharks, both jaws move up and down, the jaws open fearsomely wide, making it easy to kill its victim. Tomas lifted the top jaw of the baby hammerhead and looked at the rows and rows of formidable teeth. The front tier, which was a line of sharp triangles, stood upright. 6 more rows lay prone behind it. There were replacements. Each row would move steadily forward to continually replace the front row when it became dulled and was shed after 7 or 8 days of voracious feeding, when a new row would take its place. Grandpapa, Tomas said when Ramon joined him at the cleaning table, can I have these jaws to clean and sell? Propped open and dried, the jaws were a favorite souvenir for the American tourists, and they paid well for them. You may have them, said Ramon, provided you don't buy any more gunpowder for Jose's fireworks. Tomas threw back his head and laughed from his heart. I wouldn't do that, he said. Now would I? He smiled innocently. Ramon harumphed. Clean them carefully, Ramon said, removing his fish knife from its sheath on his belt. A shark has no bones, just cartilage. It's easy to damage, and if it is, you won't get a good price for it. After sharpening his knife, Ramon cut the tough shark skin from mouth to tail. Grabbing the head, he pulled off the skin with his pliers, moving swiftly and steadily so as not to damage it. Shark skin was valuable. Grind some salt for me, Tomas, he said. We'll prepare the shark tonight. Tomorrow we are going to bring in the nets and go home for the weekend. The Christmas festival has begun. You don't want to work tomorrow? Asked Miguel, who had joined them. We have very few fish to sell. We might as well give up and enjoy ourselves, Ramon answered with a sigh. The fishing is terrible. Tomas was startled. He had never heard his grandfather give up before. He looked at him. Ramon's mouth was drawn down and his black, deep-set eyes lacked their usual sparkle. Tomas worried to see him so discouraged. Ramon was the sun and the moon and the stars, everything constant and reliable. He must not change. Perhaps, Tomas thought, if I tell him about the whale shark, he will smile again. Then the three of us together can carry it into the plaza, holding it high above our heads. Then he remembered the ship. Maybe there was no whale shark either. He did not speak out. No oficiales? Miguel asked Thomas. No oficiales, replied Tomas. They were myths too.